Page 15. They consist of soldiers, non-commissioned officers, and officers released from the Iraqi army. The committee further stated that 100 retired Iraqi army officers would proceed to Syria within a week to train Syrian officers. 1. According to reliable reports, at least 1,400 Iraqi volunteers have passed into Syria. Some of the earlier contingents who arrived in Syria fully armed have departed for Palestine after brief training at the Katana barracks. 35. Recruiting in other Arab countries has not at the moment assumed large proportions, although government statements are on record, which give full authority for any such activity that might be undertaken. It is evident that the Arab population as a whole is reluctant, despite official incitement, to embark on hazardous military operations. The masses need the encouragement of military success and the certainty that there will be no strong international reaction before embarking on a general campaign. The Arab News Agency, however, reported from Mecca on December 9 that recruiting offices had only just been opened at Riyadh and other centers. The same news agency had reported on December 21 that hundreds of recruits are enlisting daily in Saudi Arabia. On December 8, Azam Pasha told the press that Ibn Saud had placed his regular troops at the League's service and had given his blessing to any desert tribe that wished to fight for Palestine. 2:36. In describing these recruiting activities, the Jewish Agency has mainly relied on Arab reports. No such reliance appears to be reasonable in regard to the numbers involved. The tendency is to give exaggerated figures, but the fact remains that a widespread recruiting campaign for violence in Palestine is being encouraged and sponsored by Arab governments. On December 18, the Ministry of the Interior in Damascus warned correspondents against too detailed reporting on volunteer training and other military preparation in connection with Palestine. 3. Arms purchases. 37. Arab governments who possess state resources and the access to the open markets are in a good position to ensure that sufficient arms are available for creating a prolonged breach of the peace in 1. AP, Baghdad, December 27. 2. UP, Cairo, December 8. 3. UP, Damascus, December 18. Page 16. Palestine. On December 18, it was reported from Cairo that senior military officers of 4 Arab states have left the country on a mission to purchase arms and ammunition as part of the Arab League plan to prevent the inception of the Jewish state in Palestine. The mission officers from Egypt, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon plan to visit Pakistan, India, France, Switzerland, Spain, and Czechoslovakia. The Arab armies, it seems, have no arms surplus, and such a move on the League's part is necessary to supplement the guerrilla arsenals. 1:38. The Egyptian newspaper Al-Masri reported on January 20 that the Mufti had asked the Egyptian Prime Minister for permission to transfer to Palestine all arms and ammunition acquired by his agents and envoys in Egypt, the Western Desert, and Libya. On January 14, the same newspaper stated that all arms used by Iraqi volunteers in Palestine were modern weapons received from Britain, and further that the Egyptian government was preparing legislation which would enable Palestinian Arabs to acquire arms in Egypt and transfer them to Palestine. 39. On January 28, it was reported from Cairo, Ahmed Hussein, leader of the Young Egyptian Party, stated that the Egyptian government had supplied several thousand rifles to Palestine Arabs. He said that they were given to the ex-Mufti of Jerusalem. 2:40. In this connection, the Jewish Agency has to draw special attention to the grave and singular feature of Arab arms purchases, which is the availability of British arms to Arab governments and their potential use by those governments for aggression in Palestine. This feature of the situation will be referred to in a further memorandum. Infiltration into Palestine. 41. Another stage in the assistance by Arab governments to the projected plans of invasion and war in Palestine is the violation of frontiers between their own territories and Palestine by the infiltration of volunteers and armies. According to reliable reports and incontestable evidence, this process has been going on for several weeks. As already pointed out, attacks from Syria and Lebanon against Jewish villages in North Palestine served as cover and screen for the infiltration of hundreds of volunteers who are taking up their positions in Palestine in preparation for future aggression. On January 9, the 1. New York Times from Cairo, December 18. 2. AP, January 28. Page 17. New York Times contained the following report from the Associated Press in Baghdad. A convoy of Iraqi volunteers, 90 commandos and instructors, released by Iraq's army, left today en route to Palestine. The contingent, which includes officers, is supplied with light arms, including machine guns and grenades. It will instruct and train volunteers. Other such groups are expected to leave Baghdad soon. On January 15, the Associated Press from Baghdad reported that Jamal Husseini, vice president of the Palestine Arab Higher Executive, had witnessed the departure of 200 trained Iraqi volunteers for Palestine. On January 25, reports were published of the arrival in Palestine of 750 armed men from Iraq via Transjordan and their concentration in Tubas in the Nablus area. According to the New York Times of January 26, Arab sources stated that these fighters had been deployed through a wide area. The Jewish Agency is able to confirm the accuracy of the following two reports, published in the New York Times of January 26. The first report from the newspaper's correspondent in Damascus reads, Fawzi el-Kawukchi, Commander-in-Chief of the Arab People's Army, was reported today to be preparing to leave for Palestine. The number of his men who have crossed the Lebanese and Syrian frontiers to gather in the mountain region around Nablus in Palestine was said to exceed 3,500. Mr. Kawukchi has organized a general staff, which will enter Palestine, with him to direct operations. The volunteer army is under order not to become involved in major operations, but to concentrate on organization. Asked when he would depart, Mr. Kawukchi said, "Never mind the date, but when I go the whole world will know." The second report comes from the United Press in Beirut on January 25 and reads as follows. 1,000 well-trained Arab soldiers slipped into Palestine from Lebanon, Transjordan, and Syria during the past 2 nights, reliable sources said today. It was said to have been the third large wave of volunteers to infiltrate into Palestine since the United Nations decided to create Arab and Jewish states. 42. On January 26, the Jerusalem correspondent of the New York Herald Tribune reported the following details of the arrival in Palestine of Syrian and Iraqi volunteers. Page 18. The 750 Syrians and Iraqis formed the largest contingents of volunteers yet to reach Palestine in preparation for the coming Arab War on Partition. Unlike Abdul Qadir's men who follow the Mufti and concern themselves with local fighting now, the foreigners arrived under the auspices of the Arab League. Reportedly, they were under instructions to confine themselves to training and familiarizing themselves with the country. The men traveled in column, accompanied by a mule train, to ford the Jordan River and a dozen trucks with supplies. The trucks were allowed to cross the river at Jisr el-Majami in northeastern Palestine, where troops of Abdullah's Arab Legion guard a bridge. Their equipment included radio, Bren and Sten guns, rifles, and mortars. British police believed they also had light armored cars and perhaps a few field pieces. They brought their own food and for 2 days camped in tents, pitched in the Arab-controlled valley around Tubas, a town halfway between Jerusalem and the Sea of Galilee. A government spokesman said a full report had been sent to London. Financial assistance. 43. Direct assistance given by Arab states to aggression in Palestine also takes the form of financial contributions for the recruitment and equipment of armed forces preparing for active violence in Palestine. The Minister of the Interior of Syria announced on December 20th that the sole body authorized to collect money for Palestine would be a committee to be appointed by him. 1. The Arab League Council had recommended it so far that the League states allocate immediately the requisite funds for this purpose, i.e. of raising funds for war in Palestine. 2. It is reported that a subscription of over $4 million has been made by Arab states for the purchase of arms in aid of the Palestinian campaign. On December 17th, the New York Times reported from Beirut that money for the Arab cause appears to be plentiful. The Syrian parliament has allocated 2 million Syrian pounds, and the Lebanese government another £1 million. Another £1,500,000 have been raised from individuals in the two countries. 44. An unsavory feature of Arab attempts to increase the revenue available for arms purchases has been a campaign of extortion from 1. Arab News Agency, December 20th. 2. Al-Ahram, October 10th. Page 19. Helpless Jewish minorities in Arab countries. On December 10th, the Jews of Egypt were called upon to contribute generously to the Save Palestine Fund. The call was published in the organ of the Muslim Brethren by the youth section of the Al-Azhar University 1. In Syria, where 7 synagogues were burnt in Aleppo by a rioting mob early in December, the Jewish Community Council was forced to collect funds and hand them over to the Arab Committee for the purchase of arms to kill their Jewish brethren in Palestine. The atmosphere existing in Lebanon can best be described through the following extract from a Beirut newspaper, too. It has been reported that Jews of Saida visited this office in order to complain about the attacks to which they have been subjected, i.e. by Arabs. They have now condemned the partition of Palestine and have declared their willingness to contribute money for Palestine, i.e. for the Arabs of Palestine. We have been informed that the committee of the office has reassured the Lebanese Jews that despite personal acts of hostility, no future malevolence is intended against them. In the opinion of the committee, Lebanese Jews can do nothing against the security of Arab peoples. Donations can be sent directly to the permanent office in the city. Conclusion. 45. In its task of determining whether a threat to the peace, a breach of the peace, or an act of aggression exists, the Security Council may be guided by the view of the General Assembly that any or all of those three situations is created by an attempt to alter by force the settlement envisaged by this resolution. The Arab governments have jointly and severally defined their objective in almost those very words. See paras 5 to 13 above. Indeed, it is axiomatic that a violent revolt against an international judgment cannot fail to threaten international peace and security, since it constitutes a defiance of the very organization to whose care the preservation of peace has been entrusted. 46. The Jews of Palestine, with the full support of the Jewish Agency, will do their part in resisting this aggression against their lives, their future, and their internationally sanctioned rights. They regard the General Assembly's resolution as a compromise reached. 1. Jewish Telegraphic Agency, December 11th reporting article in Al-Ikhwan al-Muslimin. 2. Al-Ittihad al-Lubnani, December 22nd. Page 20. By judgment between conflicting claims. This compromise makes heavy demands upon them in terms of sacrificing historic claims and claims which had previously received international consent. The Palestine Mandate reserved an area of 45,000 square miles from the scope of Arab independence for the primary purpose of establishing a Jewish national home. Transjordan was later excluded from this purpose, and now half the area of Western Palestine is allotted to the Arabs as their eighth sovereign state. Thus, on 7/8 of the area of the original Palestine Mandate, 2 Arab states are to be established for the independence of 1,500,000 Arabs, who form 80% of the Arab population in the area of the original Palestine Mandate. The primary purpose of the mandate is expressed, at a time of greatest Jewish need, by the constitution of a Jewish state, in 1/8 the area originally set aside for Jewish immigration and development. This restriction of Jewish claims was approved by the United Nations in an effort to meet Arab interests and in deference to the cause of peace after prolonged and minute investigation of the problem in the light of the Charter, and with a view to seeking the maximum degree of self-determination attainable in present conditions. There is thus no justified sense of unredressed grievance to which the Arabs can have recourse. Indeed, they frankly acknowledge that their aim is to deny all Jewish rights of national freedom and establish a monopoly of independence in their own behalf. 47. In their determination to resist any encroachment on the rights which the General Assembly has approved, the Jews are not fighting for themselves alone. What has been outlined in these pages is a total assault upon the principles of the Charter and the authority of the United Nations. The Arab states are taking effective collective measures for the creation of threats to the peace and the encouragement of acts of aggression in direct violation of Article 1 of the Charter. In defiance of Article 2, they are employing in their international relations the threat or use of force. Regardless of Article 2, Paragraph 5, they decline to give the United Nations every assistance in any action it takes in accordance with the present charter. They turn a deaf ear to a specific appeal from the General Assembly, November 29, to abstain from any action which might hamper or delay the carrying out of its resolution. They flout a unanimous resolution of the General Assembly which condemns propaganda in whichever country conducted, which is designed to provoke and encourage a threat to the peace, breach of the peace and acts of aggression. They carry their defiance of the United Nations to the point of conspiring against the lives of representatives and officers of the Page 21. United Nations carrying out their responsibilities under the Charter. They undermine the basic purpose of the United Nations, that armed force shall not be used except in the common interest of the United Nations. The world is thus faced with an attempt to hold up the Charter to mockery and violation in pursuit of ambitions, which have been judged and found inadmissible by the highest tribunal of international opinion. The Jewish Agency is convinced that the success of this challenge would spell the everlasting discredit of the United Nations, and is confident that the Jews, in defending their own national rights, are also defending the most significant and universal of human ideals. 48. The Jewish Agency therefore appeals to the Security Council through the United Nations Palestine Commission to take the action prescribed in Chapter 7 of the Charter against a threat to the peace, a breach of the peace, and acts of aggression provoked, committed, threatened, and prepared by the Arab states, members of the Arab League, in concert with the Palestine Arab Higher Committee. Copies of this publication have been filed with the Department of Justice, Washington, D.C., where the registration of the Jewish Agency for Palestine as an agent of the Jewish Agency for Palestine, Jerusalem, is available for public inspection. The fact of registration should not be considered as approval by the United States government of the contents of this publication.